Hello, and welcome to Exploring Axon, a podcast where we discuss Axon Framework, Axon Server, and their ecosystem. I am your host and a software developer at AxonIQ, Sarah Torrey. In this episode, I spoke with my colleague Milen Dyankov on education and learning platforms at AxonIQ. This is part one of our conversation. I hope you enjoy it, and let's have a listen. Hi, Milen. How are you today? Thank you so much for joining me.
Hey, Sarah, I'm super happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I'm doing good. How are you?
Yeah, thanks. It's a pleasure. My apologies to you and the audience for my raspy voice today. I'm dealing with bad allergies this time of year, so yeah, apologies for that. But other than that, I'm doing great. So I'm really excited to talk to you about education and the topic of learning, which is one of my favorite topics ever. But before we tackle that, tell everybody a little bit about yourself and where you're located and your educational background, career, whatever you like to share.
Oh, wow. Yeah, let me try to cut that story short because I don't want to be take the whole podcast to talk
We're,
about my.
we're joking about all art starting at age 6. Then maybe not start at age 6.
Yeah,
You
probably
know?
early childhood.
Let's start maybe in teen years. No, just kidding. Okay, go ahead. Yeah,
Uh,
whatever you
but,
like.
but but I guess I guess there's even more to skip from my teenage years. So let's just go on the adult part.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah, like I'm okay, start with my name. My name is Milen Dyankov. I was born in Bulgaria, just to put a mark on like where it started. But
Right.
I but I'm currently based in Poland. Been here for about I think over 20 years now. And that was a long journey, going through a bunch of different countries. Yeah, um, cutting the story short. So, in terms of like technical backgrounds, well, it's been pretty much everything I've been done in my professional life. It's around IT.
Right.
Started with it as a developer, then growing through software architect, leading the developers teams at the company, then going through consulting and solution engineering. And honestly, it's kind of like easier to mention the roles I haven't been at in the IT. Uh,
Right.
um, so most recent experience, and that's the last decade or so, is the role of a developer advocate. Like it goes in
Mhm.
different titles and organizational structures and things like that. But I'd like to go with developer advocate. I really
Right.
don't like the like this junior and senior kind of thing. It's to
Mhm.
me it's not a the organization hierarchy that it's important, but rather the skill set that you have to
Right.
take to do something or not do something. So I kind of transitioned from like the folks who are writing the code to the towards the folks who are teaching other folks how to write code
Yeah.
and build applications. And my focus is mostly on architecture. Like I feel more comfortable, and my background is more into how do you construct an application, how do you how do you do the design and the architecture, rather than the nuts and bolts of specific language, and things like that. So
Mhm.
so yeah, that's pretty much where I am today. Kind of leading the developer advocacy team, or what we call it, DevRel at Axonic,
Yeah.
and trying to help other developers out there who are using our products, but also those who are just interested in getting started with things like domain-driven design and CQRS, or event sourcing, or event-driven microservices, to use some buzzwords. Um, then yeah, trying to get them started, get them successful with their projects. That's
Right.
essentially what the focus is these days.
So what you mentioned about some of these terms like CQRS, event-driven architecture, and so forth. So there is a lot of really great material out there, but at the same time, there's not enough. And we do have a lot of folks who are sort of new to this realm of software development as a whole. And we're trying to kind of, or rather, you, especially in your role right now, is trying to facilitate that for people and help them with that learning curve. So, you've been with Axonic for, I think, about 2 years now, but prior to that, you did have exposure, of course, to the framework and the server, so you knew about these products. And can you tell me a little bit about your process when you got to be exposed to some of these terminologies like CQRS and DDD and Axon products a little bit more specifically? How did you educate yourself? And then coming into this role and trying to bring that education to others who are new to this field, how are you trying to facilitate that, and what kind of tools you've been using, if you can share that with everybody?
Sure. So as I mentioned, I've been in this role, this developer advocacy role for quite some time, and that involves going to a lot of events, talking to a lot of people, and regardless of like what you talk about, you get to talk to people who do a variety of different things, and that's quite interesting. So naturally, all these terms have popped up in different conversations, whether that is like I've been attending a talk about it or just happen to be having a conversation with someone who is very excited about those topics. Um, and I would disagree with you about that there is not enough. I think the problem is not that there is not enough information out there. I think it's the opposite. It's too much information,
Okay.
and it's I think, but it's not about all these terms. It's about everything these days. I think internet is overloaded with information, and the problem
Hmm.
these days is not about not having the information, but being able to tell which is a quality information and which is just
Sure.
noise.
And I
Right?
think, as somebody who was new to these, just a couple of years ago, to these terms, a lot of them, yes, there's a lot out there. But as you mentioned, which one to pick and which ones are actually useful, and that was the hardest thing for me personally to cherry pick, basically. And a lot of them are extremely technical, in a sense that you get too sort of bogged off with all these technicality of things versus kind of having a generalized idea of what is this about before diving a little bit deeper into the details. Yeah, so I, yeah, definitely agree with you on that.
Yeah, so what is it about is actually the key phrase here, if you ask me. Because there is a lot, I mean, even these days, there's a lot of arguing going on in pretty much, and that's not about all this stuff that we are involved in, but pretty much anything. So you pick a random term, and I actually did a talk about that some time ago with different company anyways, but
Yeah.
it's not the new thing. It's been for a while. You pick any term or abbreviation, because we in software industry love to like 3 4 letter abbreviations for pretty
And
much
we love to
everything.
throw it at everybody, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like just pick a random 4 letters. They probably mean something, right? Um, so you pick any term or a concept or something, and I bet any amount that you'll find a place on the internet where people argue about what is and what it is not. Like, oh, that's not how you do it. That's how you do it, right? And then you start reading, and then it's like, if you already have strong opinion about it, then you can pick a side. But if you're new to it, you're basically like, what's going on here? Like, is this good or bad? Is this applicable
Yeah.
or is this noise? Is like, is this people, are these people just promoting their own thing, or is this actually helping others into building something of a value, right? And there's
Mhm.
not an easy answer to those questions. And um, the tough part is you actually have to make the choice kind of on your own, that you want to go with something, and only after that kind of narrow the focus and discuss with people who are in this particular narrow space, how things are being done, like what works, what doesn't, what to avoid and what to embrace, and things like that. So yeah, it's been the same trip for me. When I first heard those terms, it was just like any other term. Oh, okay, they come up with something that probably has some sense, otherwise they wouldn't be talking about it, right? But
Right.
but how it is applicable in real life, like how it is, like do actually people build stuff with this? Do they design applications and use them in production this way? And if they do, is it like a general purpose approach? Can I build any application with it? Or is it like a specific narrow focused on a specific vertical or in a specific industry, or just a bunch of use cases, right? So those were my initial struggles with when I first got into those terms. As
Right.
I did never question that there is value in it. It's just always the, like, is there enough value, if you will,
Right.
in it.
Right.
But what I like to do in situations like this is like try to take a step back and not think about the technology itself, or the pattern, or the whatever it is that someone proposes, but take a step back and think of the problem space, right? What is the problem space? What is it? What are the types of problems that this thing aims to solve? Now,
And
before
right
we,
there, you just hit DDD, right? As we're
yeah,
focusing on this domain.
uh, yeah,
Here, I'm
exactly.
throwing it at you now. Right.
But and I kind of now, so DDD is probably the one I knew the best before joining Axonic Bits, because
Okay.
I actually was one of the first at my previous company many years ago to read the DDD book and actually start talking about it. It
Yeah.
didn't get adopted at the time. Actually, a lot of people thought it's like it's too complex. I mean, like you always hear that. Like, oh well, I like the idea, but implementing this is like, well, it's too much.
Yeah.
Right? I think you still hear this today
Yeah.
among a lot of people.
Mhm.
And that's a different story though, because I think that is because a lot of people think and try to implement things literally, like they just they want to go by the book, like
Mhm.
it's written,
Yeah.
and they want to implement it this way, and you really have to read the book and understand what it says and apply it in your context, which is a little bit different story. But anyways, I knew
Right.
DDD. CQRS and event sourcing were a little bit confusing to me. I couldn't
Mhm.
understand why those are important and what do they give. But all my environment at the time, there was almost no one who's using those terms, and you would hear
Mhm.
from pretty much everyone that. Yeah, don't waste your time with this. It's a nice
Yeah.
idea, but it's not applicable, in real life.
Mhm.
And those are people who are knowledgeable. Those are people who actually have quite some experience, and it's not like just random people talking. So
Right.
you don't go like, oh, they don't know what they're talking about. What it turns out is everyone talks out of their own experience and their own backyard. All right. If you never been into that and you have the tool set that is working for you, you have no reason to look for something else.
Yeah.
And actually, if you think about the customers of Axonic and the people that use our software, that I would argue that vast majority of those folks are people who have experienced issues or troubles building the software they want to build with
Mhm.
other tools that are more popular on the market, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you convert towards those tools, and if you have someone to actually show you how to properly use them,
Mhm.
then you discover the real value and the real power of it, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't think anyone would be successful with those if led to do this on their own,
Right.
right? It's too much pressure by the environment out there to use conversion. What is the English word? Conventional tools
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
stocks, right? There are a
Right.
few popular things on the market
Mhm.
that pretty much every developer go for,
Yeah.
right? And there's reason for that. and it's really hard to make the decision to go off the beaten track.
Right,
Right.
exactly. We had actually, it's great that you mentioned that, because one of our colleagues, Sarah Pellegrini, whom I had a pleasure of talking to in one of our episodes about something different. But she had a talk in a conference not too long ago about the mindset and the importance of changing your mindset when you're trying to sort of adapt some of these tools into your projects. Because it's not about the fact that maybe you're not knowledgeable enough in the field. And many of these folks are experts. They've been in the field of software development, software architecture for decades, and they know what they're doing and they know what they're talking about. And now, as you mentioned, adapting new tools and new ways of doing it, it kind of requires a bit of a change of a mindset to get there. So that's definitely not an easy thing, but that, I guess, sort of a prerequisite to what we want to get. Now, with what you've done since you have joined Axonic is something really valuable, in my opinion, which is trying to kind of, from a neutral point of view, look at these terminologies and educate people on how they can use it in their applications and in their systems. So you came up with various ways of doing it, and I'll have you kind of talk a little bit more in detail about it. But maybe let's start with the Discuss platform, which is a community platform for folks to talk about maybe some of their issues and to collaborate and so forth. And another one is the developer portal that you came up with. So let's maybe discuss these two before we go into the bulk of what your time is being spent on these days.
All right. Yeah. So about the Discuss platform, actually, that is an evolution of something that we already had in place,
Yeah.
and that there was a what is it called? A Google group, I believe it is.
Yes, it was a Google group. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but the Google group was a little bit like kind of like fire and forget thing. So you drop an email, and you know that some folks are there. Maybe they read it, maybe they don't. Right. And eventually someone's gonna answer to you. What I didn't like about that is that I got no feedback. Like I didn't know how many people saw that email. I don't know.
Mhm.
Like, and also there was like not a clear rules about what you can write about. Like, is this the public unofficial support forum of Axonic
Yeah.
that I drop a question and some of the Axonic folks will answer, or is
Mhm.
this a general discussion? Can should I ask only if I have a problem with the particular, like, Axon framework, for example, or server? Or
Right.
can I ask a question like, "Hey, I have a problem with designing this thing. I have a
Mhm.
problem with or I don't know what's the best way to model this domain. Like, should I
Yeah.
ask this question there? It doesn't belong there. Like, you don't really know,
Yeah.
right? It's just an email to a bunch of folks, and you
Mhm.
hope that they have the time to help you out.
Right.
So what I was looking for is something more structured, and that's how Disgust was born, which has categories. So we have a category for framework for server, where we monitor very closely and try to help people who have questions and concerns, or just want to discuss things about the products. But we also have a general category about the concepts, like domain driven design or event sourcing. So you're more than welcome to go there and drop your questions. Like, hey, I'm modeling this domain and I don't know if this should be this way or that way. Like, how do I do bounded context and stuff? And people have started to ask these questions, and those spark some interesting discussions because there's always
Mhm.
more than one way to do it. But as a most of the time, the person that asks the question does not look for give me the code so I can copy paste it in my application, but they rather look for arguments, like why it is a good idea to do it this way and why it is not, or if I do
Mhm.
it this way, what should I be watching out for, like
Right.
what's the worst thing that can happen, right, and
Mhm.
things like that. And that's why I value Discuss, because it's not just Axonic folks, it's not just us discussing things about the products. it's the entire community which are building a variety of different applications and different topics and different verticals and domains, and they can contribute their experience and say, yeah, if you do this, be careful about that. Oh, we did this, I can show you something, right? those are
Yeah.
the um those are the like it's clear that it's open for everyone. It's not
Mhm.
just a mysterious email that you
Yeah.
send messages to.
And I really have to applaud you on coming up with this sort of different platform, because we see so many interesting conversations and the community really is involved. And of course, we monitor all of these questions within our team at Axonic, but um, a lot of times when we go and look at a topic that's come up or a question, it really, for me personally, it warms my heart when I see another member of the community outside of our own team has responded to this question and has shared their experience and their knowledge with somebody who's asking a question or has hit a roadblock or something like that. So it's extremely valuable because I am personally all about community. I love to see community come together and resolve something together. And it's really, really nice to see that. And a lot of times, as you mentioned, some of these use cases or projects are not something that many of us may even think about when we're thinking about CQRS. And so seeing some of these applications, some of these ideas, and some of these use cases is just kind of like, oh, this is really cool. Somebody's doing this. I never thought I could do this, and that's really neat. You read about it and you learn about it. So I really really appreciate having this kind of platform to. For me to even educate myself and get to know some of the other folks who are doing some really amazingly cool stuff. So that's really neat. So that's a really great place for a community to come together. Now, you also came up with, or maybe also maybe evolved the developer portal that we had in place and tweaked it a little bit. Can you tell me a little bit about that and um, what is the purpose of that and what audience is that trying to reach?
So you now put me in a dangerous ground because developer portal is something that so far has been known only internally within Axonic. I don't think
Oops.
we've ever publicly mentioned it so far. And a couple of posts I've done in the past, I mentioned we've been working on something that I will announce later. But it's never been. I don't think it's been publicly said so far. What are we working on? But since you brought the topic, I don't think it's a secret. It's just more of a we want to have really good quality product before we start talking about it. And I think the we don't want to what is the term again here, build up expectations,
Yeah,
because you
and not
start talking
deliver.
about
Yeah.
yeah. um, but yeah, the idea about having a developer portal has been around for quite some time. I think it was
Hmm.
around even before me joining Exonic, but
Yes. Yeah.
um, it evolved from a place where you have the documentation and some examples
Hmm.
to having a place for a hub, if you will, for
Hmm.
all the developers, or starting point. Because
Right.
right now our website kind of serves double purpose. It serves
Right.
developers, like they search for stuff, they find exonic.io,
Hmm.
and and they want to find technical materials there, right? That's what they
Sure.
would like. If you're a developer and go to axonic.io, you would want to see code, right? You will want to
Right.
see architectural diagrams and
Yeah.
those things, right? At the same time, if you are more into say product management, or you're
Mm.
more business focused, like a business analyst, or designing the solution, right? You're not
Right.
so much about the code. You like you're not looking for what the annotation is, or how does
Mhm.
integrate with Spring Boot, but
Yeah.
rather what is the problem that itself is this applicable for, I don't know, auditing, for mm, because like I have auditing requirements in my product, or I have a
Mhm.
GDPR requirements. Like, is there something that helps me solve those, right? So
Right.
what we're trying to do at the moment at Axonic.io website is trying to balance these two concerns, if you will. Like,
Right.
make sure that no matter who you are, we can give you the answers that you're looking for by coming to this place. So the developer portal is a fraction of that, if you will, that is going to be focused on answering strictly developer questions. Things like, where is the documentation, who wrote what about technical stuff, like
Yeah.
who is there are there any like videos, what are the products actually, like from technical perspective. I don't think we have a very good job, we do a very good job at right now at describing on the website what the actual product is for a technical person, because again the
Right.
text is balanced between different readers, all right.
Mhm. Mhm.
But on the technical, the developer portal, we want to focus on the technical side. Like, we get questions a lot like, do I have to use Spring Boot in order to use Axon framework, right? And obviously the answer is no, but on the other hand, we integrate so well with Spring Boot, and a huge, like probably vast majority of our users are using Spring Boot, that you get all the examples with Spring Boot, and then you easily
Yeah.
get the impression that Axonic is kind of a something like a Spring Boot extension, if you will, right?
Mhm.
Sorry, Axon framework, not Axonic.
Yeah.
Axonic is the company. So yeah, that's another thing with these names. I did that with my previous company. I catch myself doing it here. It's constantly mixing up the product and the company name. Uh,
It's okay. I'm sure you're not the first person, but yeah.
but yeah, so people look at they have these types of questions. So also questions about licensing. Now that's a tricky
Mhm.
question, because if you're a software developer and you hear open source license, then pretty much you're good to go. Well, you may want to know whether that is Apache or not, or I mean, how restrictive it is,
Sure.
right? But when you are actually looking for to commercialize this, and put it in a commercial product, then things become much more complicated. You probably have to
Right.
do some mm, how it's called, due diligence on like what libraries use what licenses. You have to track those in particular ways, and so things differ from how you approach the products and their characteristics and properties, depending on which role you are. So, a
Yeah.
developer portal that we're working on is focusing strictly on developers. We want them to feel
Mm.
at home. We want them to have a hub where whenever they need something, they go there and it's easy to find.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of the central place for developers, and from there they can learn more. We probably gonna direct them to other places, because it's not meant to contain all the information, but
Right.
it's rather a hub for all the information. So you go there, and whatever you find there, it's relevant for you as a software developer, and then we put you on the right track.
Yeah, makes sense. So, I guess stay tuned and, see
Yeah,
when that's coming.
it's
Coming.
actually in a very advanced stage. We don't have a
Yeah.
release date. In all honesty, at this time, we don't have a release date planned. It's not that I don't want to tell you. We honestly don't have one, because it's also interconnected with a bunch of other things that my team and other teams are working on. But obviously, all of us wants to get this out the door as soon as possible.
Yeah, makes sense.
It's again, like these days it's like everyone is blaming the pandemic, so whenever you say that, people don't know whether that is true or not, or it's just your excuse. But in all honesty, the pandemic hasn't made it any easier, right?
Yeah, of course. It's caused a lot of challenges and difficulties, that's for sure. I hope you liked my talk with Milen. Please join me as we discuss Axon Academy during the second portion of our conversation. Until then, have a great time and happy coding!